Hello folks, I hope that you're having just a great day today and keeping yourself safe in our modern COVID world today. Today I want to go back to one of the classics of horror. We're going to take a look at The King in Yellow by Robert Chambers. And we're going to take a look at one of the short stories that's in this collection. That is the Demoiselle D'Ys. And it is about a person that our protagonist will find while he's out hunting in Breton. And so we'll be following that along and enjoying it. Now, before we go into my little bit of a synopsis, a little bit of review for you, this is only the second story I've done by Robert Chambers, and the second story I've actually done from The King in Yellow. So let's remind you who Robert Chambers is. He's a gentleman who started writing about 1890 or so, and was writing for about 40 years of his life. And during that time, he wrote almost 70 novels. He wrote tons of short stories, plays, lots of things. He was incredibly well-written, incredibly well-read, and incredibly well-received by the people of his era. But he knew he was writing for the people of his era. He was writing stuff that was not, it was the Danielle Steele of his era. He was heavily read, but even he knew his stuff was not going to last. He was writing for them. He was just writing, sort of in that Penny Dreadful era, at the early pulp era. And even he knew and would admit that he was just writing for the masses. He wasn't writing these deeper works that were going to endure, with one notable exception, 1895's The King in Yellow. He wrote things like romances, historical periods, and things that were these things that kind of really were welcomed by the crowd, but which didn't have anything deep or major interesting happening. And he was, but for one bright shining moment in 1895, he self-publishes a collection of 5 horror short stories that are some of the most influential horror short stories you have ever read. I've already done my favorite in this collection for you, the first story, The Yellow Sign, which I'll actually link to you if you want to check it out, if you haven't reviewed that or haven't read that. So what I'll do for you, I'll also in below, I'll link you to this collection, The King in Yellow, in case you want to read it in paper form like I do. I'll also give it to you as a free online in case you just want to read it online, as stuff that was written in 1895 is clearly past its sell-by date in terms of its copyright, so you can enjoy it. Now, I went back and reread it again today while I was at a local mall, the Arundel Mills Mall, which is near Baltimore. And I was there watching the Windwalkers film. I really enjoyed it, but it's an FYI. And I spent about 4 or 5 hours at the mall. And on my way there, taking the Uber, I actually just read this short story. It's the Demoiselle D'Ys. It's the second time I've read it. And I read a couple of other stories out of this collection while I was at the malls. I really enjoyed it. And I was doing that knowing that I was going to come back to it. And what I wanted to do was hit up Robert Chambers. I'd like to knock out the rest of the rest of the 4 stories to the left in The King in Yellow. So we're going to be reading the Demoiselle D'Ys, which was the first one I went back to. It's 15 pages long. It wouldn't take you that long to read. It was probably 20-25 minutes in the car on the way to the mall itself. And so I really enjoyed it this morning. And it was a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and get started with it. So you're going to start with this gentleman who is hunting in the Breton moors by himself. And he's an avid hunter, and he's sports hunting, and he has gotten lost. And so he's gotten lost. He's wandering around. You have a page or two of description of the moors, the various creatures that he encounters while he's in the moors, natural moors creatures in the French moors of Brittany. And then he's getting more and more lost, more and more of the days coming down, and so he decides to sit down and rest for a little bit as the day's starting to pass. And because he's now admitting he's officially lost, and he may have to spend the night out in the moors unless he can find a place to stay the night, and he hasn't seen anything in hours. So he's looking for a peasant's hut or something like that. While he is resting, he hears a bird, grabs his gun, flapping over in the things, grabs his gun because he thinks it might be dinner, and looks at it, and it's actually not the type of food that he would want a bird. It's actually a falcon that has just killed a hare, and so he sees the falcon catching the hare, jumping up and down on it. But what surprises him is not the fact that this falcon is capturing prey. He's actually seen prey animals captured while hunting before as an avid hunter, but that this falcon seems to be actually somebody else's falcon. It has some of the accoutrements, the decorations of an actually owned falcon. And while he's watching this falcon, he hears a whistle, and a woman comes up to it, and she is not paying any attention to him at all. clearly doesn't see him, and walks over to the falcon. She has a falconer's gauntlet on. The falcon flies over to it. She dresses up the rabbit. She calls, and then she starts to leave without even seeing our protagonist. And our protagonist realizes at the last moment, because this scene has been crazy, that this might be his only way out of the moors, at least for tonight. So he jumps out and introduces himself to her. She's startled at first, but they get to talking. She has him rest for a little bit while they're talking, and they're talking a little bit about the moors, and she talks about how the moors are beautiful, and that she really loves them. And he says beautiful and cruel, just like a woman. And she's like, she takes that as an insult, and then she says, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. In order to prove you wrong, I'm going to take you back home to my castle. So she has a whistle she blows. A couple of her servants that are falconers will arrive, and they'll actually escort her and our protagonist back to the Chateau E. And that's about halfway through the short story. So I'll go ahead and leave you there. So this is an incredibly well written short story, but again, what's going to be happening? She mentions while they're talking that the moors are enchanted or cursed, and it's hard to get back out of them again. Is that the case or not? Why is this in a horror collection? It hasn't had any horror things in the first half of the story, but it goes to a fun place. It hits you in the feels. It does a lot of fun stuff, and it's well written. When Robert Chambers is writing for something that he cares about, where he's actually caring about it, the dude is good. He hits on all cylinders. I think it's a 9 out of 10. The only story in it that I actually think it's a 10 out of 10 is the first one that I reviewed for you, the Yellow Sign. This one is really, really well done too. So I would highly recommend you check it out. If you haven't heard of Robert Chambers, check him out. He's a very interesting guy who's living this life, this grand life, because he was at all these sales. He had all these antiques that he'd bring in, his house that he loved buying things for with his works. So again, he just cared about the sales, and he would sell. He was a huckster when it came to selling stuff, but again, he has this one piece that has stood the test of time, and I definitely think it's worth checking out. This stuff has had a lot of horror, lot of horror trends, which we've talked about in the Yellow Sun. This one to the less of. This is probably one of the fastest short stories in the collection, but one of the ones that's the least linked to the rest of the collection. It has the loose collection of the title of the King in Yellow. But we talked about Robert Chambers before, what are the things that he does. So I would recommend that you check this out. It's a strong story. And again, I'll link you to an online version as well as this collection in case you want to check it out. So there you are. I'll leave you to it. Have you heard of Robert Chambers? Have you read Demoiselle D'Ys? What'd you think about it? I'd be happy to engage you with it further in the comments below. If you like this video, please feel encouraged to hit that subscribe button, because there's going to be so many more of these classics to follow, right? And finally, hey, I just want to thank you for taking some time out of your day and watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, right? So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I really do appreciate it. So thanks again, and have a great day.